Solitude doesn't break you. Weak identity does. You don't fear being alone. You fear what happens when the noise stops and you're stuck with your own mind. No witnesses, no applause, no distractions to prove you matter. That's why the peace of an empty room can feel like a threat. Picture it. It's late, the lights are off. Your phone glows like an altar in your hand. You scroll, not because you care, but because you're trying to outrun a feeling. A message sits unread. A notification doesn't come. Your chest tightens with that quiet panic you never admit out loud. What if no one is thinking about me? You refresh, you check again, you open apps you don't even enjoy. You watch other lives move, friends laughing, couples posting, someone winning. Then you lock the screen and the room gets louder. That's when loneliness turns into something darker, not sadness, judgment. You start prosecuting yourself. You replay conversations. You imagine how people see you. You inventory your failures like evidence. You call it depression, but what's really happening is simpler. Without external feedback, your identity starts collapsing. When you don't have a crowd to reflect you back to yourself, you don't know who you are. You only know what you can get. Modern life trained you into this dependency. It taught you that worth is public, that value is measured in replies, invitations, likes, being needed, being chosen. You learned to borrow certainty from the crowd. And borrowing always creates fear, because the lender can take it back. So, when solitude arrives, it feels like exile. Not because you're fragile, but because you were conditioned to equate attention with proof. Machiavelli would call this what it is, a problem of leverage. A person who cannot stand alone is negotiable. They can be bought with inclusion and crushed with withdrawal. People don't even need to threaten you explicitly. They only need to hint that you might be ignored, left out, disliked, and you'll betray yourself just to stay in the circle. You'll soften your standards, laugh at what you don't respect, accept crumbs, tolerate insults, say yes when your gut says no, not because you love them, because you fear disappearing. Here is the brutal truth. Solitude doesn't create your emptiness. It reveals it. It exposes how much of your life has been built as performance, how much of your confidence depends on being seen, how much of your happiness depends on being wanted. When nobody is watching, the identity collapses, and you feel like you're falling. That fall is not into loneliness, it's into yourself. And that's why solitude becomes depression for so many people. They enter silence with no inner structure, no internal government, no laws, no rituals, no purpose. So the mind turns against them. It floods them with comparisons, regrets, fantasies, and catastrophes. It whispers that being alone means being unlovable. It confuses the absence of company with the absence of value. And if you don't recognize the trick, you start treating solitude like punishment. But solitude is not punishment. It is a test. The kind of test that instantly reveals whether you are sovereign or dependent. A sovereign person can sit in a quiet room and feel power grow because they aren't waiting to be validated, they are building. A dependent person sits in the same room and feels themselves shrinking because their identity only exists in other people's reactions. So don't ask, why do I feel depressed when I'm alone? Ask the question that actually matters. What part of me only lives when someone else is looking? Because that is the part that must die if you want freedom. Not comfort, not constant connection. Freedom from the crowd's invisible leash. When you can stand alone without collapsing, you become difficult to manipulate, difficult to shame, difficult to control. That's when solitude stops being a void and becomes leverage. You think solitude makes you depressed, but solitude is just the stage. The real enemy is what walks onto it when the crowd leaves. When the room goes quiet, your mind doesn't become peaceful. It becomes loud because it finally has space to speak. And if you've spent years avoiding yourself with people, noise, work, and screens, what shows up in that silence isn't wisdom. It's unresolved material, old shame, unfinished grief, anger you never expressed, needs you learned to call too much. Solitude doesn't create these things. It removes the distractions that were keeping them sedated. This is why some nights feel like a coup. You lie down and suddenly your brain stages a trial. Every mistake you made is dragged into court. Every awkward moment becomes a criminal record. Every rejection becomes proof that something is wrong with you. You replay conversations not to learn, but to punish yourself. You rehearse arguments that will never happen. You imagine futures where you fail, where you're humiliated, where you're abandoned. Your body reacts as if the threat is real. Heart tight, stow. Call it what it is, the inner tribunal. The judge is your shame. The prosecutor is your anxiety. The evidence is whatever your mind can twist into certainty. And the verdict is always the same. Guilty. Not guilty of a specific act, but guilty of being you. Rumination is the engine. It feels like thinking, but it isn't. Thinking moves toward a solution. Rumination circles a wound to keep it bleeding. It asks the same questions with no intention to answer them. Why did I say that? Why am I like this? Why is everyone ahead of me? Why can't I be normal? The loop gives you the illusion of control, while it steals your ability to act. You become a prisoner pacing inside your own skull. Then comes comparison, the most efficient form of self-poison. Even when you're alone, you're not really alone. You're surrounded by the imagined audience in your head. You picture old classmates, exes, co-workers, strangers online. You imagine their lives as clean, confident, progressing. You imagine your life as stuck, small, behind. The details don't matter. What matters is the feeling, inferiority. And inferiority is not an emotion, it's a hierarchy your brain creates. Once you feel below everything. Here's the psychological mechanism. Your brain is a social organ. For most of human history, being excluded wasn't just painful, it was dangerous. So your nervous system treats social uncertainty like a survival threat. It wants proof that you belong. It wants signals that you're safe. It wants the warmth of being reflected back by other minds. When it doesn't get that proof, it doesn't calmly accept the unknown. It manufactures certainty, and the quickest certainty is self-blame. That's why solitude can feel like a verdict. Your mind says, if no one is here, it must be because you're not worth being around. If you're not invited, you must be defective. If you're alone, you must be failing. Notice how absolute those conclusions are. That's not reality. That's threat-response logic. The brain would rather believe a brutal story than sit in uncertainty, because uncertainty feels like helplessness. And this is the brutal frame. Depression, for many people, isn't sadness, it's powerlessness inside your own mind. Sadness can coexist with dignity. Grief can coexist with strength. But powerlessness is different. It's the feeling that your inner state owns you, that your thoughts are not tools but tyrants, that your emotions are not messages but chains. You don't just feel low, you feel governed by something you can't command. You wake up already losing, not because the world attacked you, but because your mind did. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. A ruler doesn't lose a kingdom because enemies exist. He loses it because his internal order collapses. Rebellions succeed where leadership is weak. In solitude, Your mind is your territory. If you have no laws, your impulses become the ruling class. If you have no structure, your mood becomes the constitution. If you have no discipline, your worst thoughts become your advisors. So the solution is not be more positive. That's peasant advice. The solution is governance, internal law, the ability to watch a thought rise, label it, and deny it authority. The ability to feel loneliness without obeying it. The ability to sit in silence and not confuse withdrawal with truth. You must become the state, not the citizen begging for stability today. Because silence doesn't destroy you, it exposes who is in control. And if it isn't you, solitude will feel like a prison until you learn to become the warden. Govern your inner world, and solitude becomes weapon, not a wound. If solitude is the battlefield, then discipline is the fortress. Most people enter solitude like refugees, tired, anxious, hoping the silence will heal them. It won't. Silence doesn't heal. Structure does. Solitude without structure is a lawless province. And in lawless provinces, the worst forces rise first. Rumination, cravings, self-pity, late-night spirals, cheap dopamine. Depression doesn't need to invade you from the outside. It grows naturally in ungoverned territory. So, you need a doctrine, not a vibe, not motivation, a doctrine. Machiavelli would tell you the same thing he told rulers. A state survives on laws and enforcement, not on good intentions. People don't behave because they should. They behave because consequences exist. Your inner world is no different. If you run your life on mood, you are ruled by weather. If you run it on law, you become climate. Here's the shift. Stop treating yourself like a fragile person who needs constant comfort. Start treating yourself like a kingdom that needs order. A kingdom has three parts: a schedule, an army, and an economy. When these collapse, everything collapses. First, the schedule. Sleep is not self-care. Sleep is a border. A nation without borders gets invaded. You don't try to sleep early. You set a non-negotiable curfew. Not because it's cute, but because late-night hours are when your mind mutinies. Your brain gets tired, your impulse control drops, your shame gets louder, and suddenly you're bargaining with darkness. One more video, one more scroll, one more message. That's not relaxation, that's surrender. So you cut it. You protect the edge of your day like a ruler protects the gate. Second, the army. Physical training is not about aesthetics here, it's about command. The body is your first citizen. If the body is weak, the mind becomes cowardly. If the body is trained, the mind learns obedience. You don't need some heroic routine. You need consistency that creates proof. Lift, run, walk hard, train your lungs, train your grip, train your legs. Make your nervous system familiar with discomfort. Because solitude becomes unbearable when you've trained yourself to need constant ease. Comfort makes you soft. Softness makes silence feel like torture. Training makes silence feel like recovery. Third, the economy. Solitude becomes depression when it is empty. So you make it productive. Not in a hustle cult way, in a sovereignty way. You must build something that can't be taken from you. Skill, money, competence, craft. This is where most people fail because they wait to feel inspired. Inspiration is a luxury of the already disciplined. You create meaning the Machiavellian way, through results, through proof. Proof is what calms the mind, because proof tells the nervous system, we're moving, we're not trapped. This is the core principle. You don't wait to feel good. You produce evidence that you are capable. And to produce evidence, you need enforcement, This is where Machiavelli's harsh insight matters. Love is unstable. Fear is reliable. Comfort is love. Consequence is fear. You can't love yourself into discipline because love is emotional and emotions are inconsistent. Some days you'll feel warm toward your goals. Most days you won't. So you build fear, not fear of failure as an identity, but fear of consequence as a system. If you break the law, you pay. Break your sleep curfew? Then you pay with a cold shower in the morning and no dopamine breakfast. Skip training? You pay with an extra session tomorrow, no negotiations. Waste the first hour of your day scrolling. You pay by donating money to something you dislike, or you remove a privilege you enjoy. People call this harsh. It's not. It's governance. The alternative is being governed by your worst impulses, and that is far more brutal. Now make it tactical. In solitude, you will face 3 enemies: time, temptation, and meaninglessness. Time. You need blocks. Morning block for physical training, midday block for work or skill, evening block for reading, writing, planning. The exact schedule can vary, but the blocks cannot be optional. Optional blocks become abandoned blocks, and abandoned blocks become depression because your brain starts perceiving your days as empty, and emptiness breeds dread. Temptation. Remove the easy poisons. Your phone is not neutral. It is a weapon aimed at your attention. If solitude triggers scrolling, then scrolling is the drug you use to avoid yourself. So you don't manage it, you restrict it. Put the phone in another room during work blocks. Disable the apps at night. Set hard limits. The goal isn't purity. The goal is to stop feeding the enemy inside your own house. Meaninglessness. You must build a project that makes solitude valuable. One long-term mission that gives the day a spine. It could be mastering a skill, building a business, studying a field, creating art, improving your body, stacking money, writing. The content doesn't matter as much as the structure. Measurable progress, visible proof. Because the mind relaxes when it sees momentum. Depression hates momentum. Depression survives on stagnation. Here's the part most people misunderstand. Solitude isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about becoming dangerous without needing the world. A man who can be alone and still function is unblackmailable. You can't threaten him with abandonment. You can't control him with attention. You can't buy him with inclusion. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty is built the same way in every domain: rules, rituals, and enforcement. So, build your internal government. Make your mornings predictable. Make your body trained. Make your work disciplined. Make your evenings clean. Make your inputs deliberate. And when your mood tries to vote you out of your own kingdom, you don't debate it. You outvote it with law. Because moods are temporary, laws compound. Do this long enough, and something flips. Silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like space. You stop hearing your mind as an enemy because your mind finally recognizes you as the authority. Solitude becomes a factory, not a void. And every day you spend there, you come out sharper, stronger, richer in skill, heavier in presence. That's the Machiavellian promise. The world can only control the person who needs it. So, use solitude to remove the need. The goal isn't to become cold. The goal is to become ungoverned. A lot of people here detach and imagine emotional death, becoming numb, robotic, empty. That's not power. That's a wound pretending to be strength. Real solitude requires something harder: emotional regulation, the ability to feel a storm without handing it the keys to your life. Because your mood is not your identity. Your mood is weather. And if you keep treating weather like law, you'll keep living like a refugee inside your own mind. So here is the anti-depression protocol, simple enough to remember, brutal enough to work. Step 1. Label the state. When the feeling hits, you stop calling it my life and you name it as a temporary condition: loneliness, boredom, grief, shame, restlessness. You don't argue with it. You don't romanticize it. You don't analyze it into a philosophy. You name it. This matters because unnamed emotions become myths, named emotions become data, and data can be managed. Most people collapse because they confuse a feeling with a verdict. I feel lonely becomes I am unlovable. I feel behind becomes I am a failure. That translation is the beginning of depression. So you cut it off at the source. You say, this is loneliness, not a prophecy, not a diagnosis, a state. Step 2. Convert emotion into action. Your body is the fastest way to change your mind because the body is where the emotion lives. You don't defeat loneliness by thinking better thoughts. You defeat it by moving your physiology out of collapse. So you walk, you lift, you clean, you shower cold, you write, you build. You do something physical that proves you still have agency. Depression feeds on the fantasy that you're powerless. Action breaks the spell. And you don't wait until you feel like it. That's the addiction talking. The people who master solitude act first and let the emotion follow. The ones who fail wait for emotion to approve the plan, and emotion never does. Step 3. Remove poison inputs. Most modern depression isn't created in silence. It's created by what you invite into the silence: doom scrolling, comparison, late-night texting that turns into humiliation when there's no reply, watching other people's lives like you're studying proof that yours is lacking. If you want solitude without collapse, you must stop feeding your mind content that triggers inferiority. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between real social exclusion and digital comparison. It just knows it's losing status, losing belonging, losing safety. So it panics and starts writing cruel stories. Remove the triggers, not reduce, remove. No phone in bed, no social media after a certain hour, no endless podcasts to avoid thinking, no late-night conversations that leave you anxious. You're not missing out, you're detoxing. Because loneliness is often withdrawal symptoms from validation addiction. When you've been living on attention, silence feels like starvation. Your brain screams, text someone, call someone, post something, do anything to be seen. But that urge is not love. It's dependence. And if you obey it, you reinforce the idea that you cannot regulate yourself alone. You teach your mind that it needs external approval to survive. Step 4. Controlled contact instead of neediness. This is the difference between connection and desperation. Connection is chosen. Desperation is a reflex. You don't isolate like a monk unless you're built for it. You schedule human contact like a disciplined person. 1 or 2 planned interactions a week. Gym, coffee, work session, family visit with boundaries, a call with someone who doesn't drain you. You stop begging for attention in chaotic moments, and you start building stability through intentional contact. And when the craving hits, the urge to message the wrong person, to chase reassurance, to reopen old doors, your script is short. I'm not reaching out from loneliness. I will not beg for warmth. I can sit with this. Now here's the final correction you need. Stop romanticizing the crowd. Most people don't miss intimacy. They miss anesthesia. They miss the noise that kept them from facing themselves. They miss the validation that temporarily lifted the weight of their own unresolved life. They miss the comfort of being distracted from their own purpose. And that's why seeking people impulsively often makes the depression worse. You return from the social moment back into silence, and the contrast hits like a hangover. The higher the spike, the harder the crash. So, you replace the crowd with something stronger: internal stability. You learn to feel without collapsing, to be alone without narrating it as rejection, to regulate your state without recruiting another person to do it for you. This is how solitude becomes clean. This is how you become dangerous in the quiet way, because your emotional world stops being negotiable. You don't suppress the feeling. You command it. When you master solitude, something irreversible happens. Your life stops being negotiable. Because the crowd can only control the man who needs the crowd. Attention can only buy you when you're starving for it. Rejection can only break you when you still believe belonging is proof of worth. But once you can sit alone without collapsing, abandonment loses its threat, silence loses its sting, and people can feel that shift the moment you walk into a room. Your choices become clean. You stop saying yes out of fear. You stop chasing people who treat you like an option. You stop tolerating chaos just to avoid being alone. Your standards rise because you no longer need to accept whatever is offered to you. You can walk away, not in anger, but in certainty. And your relationships get better for the same reason. When you're not using people to regulate your emotions, you stop suffocating them. You stop bargaining. You stop performing. You show up whole, not hungry. You can enjoy connection without clinging to it. You can love without making love your oxygen. This is where solitude becomes leverage. It turns you into someone who can't be bribed with inclusion or punished with distance. You become selective, quiet, focused, dangerous in the calm way. Not because you're cruel, but because you're no longer easy to manipulate. Your nervous system stops flinching for approval. Your mind stops begging for proof. Your body carries discipline like armor. So, here's the final command. Stop treating solitude like punishment. Treat it like training. Training for self-command. Training for clarity. Training for independence. Because whoever can stand alone cannot be bought. And in a world where everyone is selling themselves for comfort, the person who doesn't need the crowd becomes the one the crowd respects.